The snow crunched beneath the hooves of the Reverend's horse. Clara's boots dragged in the powder as her father pulled her forward by the wrist. The mountain wind bit at her cheeks, turning them raw. Her fingers were numb from the cold, but not numb enough to forget the pressure of his grip. The cabin appeared like a shadow rising out of the trees, low-roofed, dark, and quiet, almost like it had grown from the earth. A trail of smoke curled lazily from the chimney. Beyond that, there was nothing but towering pines and the sound of wind howling through stone. She glanced back once, but there was nothing to look at anymore. No town, no home, just snow behind her and wilderness ahead. "Don't speak unless spoken to," Reverend Silas said, without looking at her. His voice had that rigid, hushed weight it always carried when he was about to make a spectacle in the name of righteousness. Clara didn't reply. Her silence, as always, only seemed to harden him further. They stopped in front of the cabin door. He knocked. 3 sharp, deliberate strikes. Footsteps moved slowly from inside. Then the door creaked open. The man who stood there was a mountain carved into flesh. Broad, bearded, fur coat layered over leather, dirt streaked across his hands. His eyes were a strange blue-gray, cold at first glance, but not dead. Just tired. "Elias Boone?" the Reverend asked, straightening. The hermit gave a slow nod. "You said urgent." "It is." Silas shoved Clara slightly forward. She stumbled but caught herself. The Reverend stepped back, like she was no longer his concern. "This girl has disgraced herself, shamed her blood. She's headstrong, defiant, and in need of correction." Elias didn't look at Clara. His eyes stayed on Silas. "I don't take in people. I survive alone. That's the agreement I made." "You also took coin to keep quiet about it," Silas replied sharply. "You said it yourself. The wilderness doesn't ask questions. Well, now I'm giving you one answer. She's yours." A silence settled. The wind stirred between the three of them, sharp as a blade. Still, Elias said nothing. Clara finally found her voice. "Please," she said softly. "I didn't do anything wrong." Silas didn't even glance at her. "You'll stay, or God will make sure you regret not obeying when you had the chance." He turned and mounted his horse. The beast snorted and stepped away through the snow. Clara didn't watch him leave. The only sound left was the creak of pine branches in the wind and the steady inhale-exhale of Elias Boone. Then he finally looked at her. Not like a man would look at something given, but like a man taking stock of a stranger caught in a storm. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, "Come in or stay out here. Either way, I'm not dragging you." He turned and left the door open. Clara hesitated. The edge of the mountain wind pressed at her back. The warmth of the cabin leaked into the cold. She stepped inside. The cabin smelled of smoke and iron. Not foul, just real. It was a one-room space with rough-hewn walls, an iron stove in the corner, a single cot, and a workbench cluttered with traps, rope, and tools she didn't recognize. Elias moved like a man who had done this same routine every day for years. He removed his coat, tossed it on a nail, stirred the fire, then sat in silence. Clara stood there, uncertain, hands wrapped tightly in the ends of her shawl. He didn't offer her food, or ask her name. She didn't expect him to. "I'm Clara," she said anyway. Her voice was dry, like dust on a church pew. He didn't look up from the fire. That night, she didn't sleep. He gave her a pile of fies and pointed to the floor near the stove. The cot remained untouched. Clara lay there, eyes wide, watching the rafters above, listening to every shift in the wood, every snap of the fire. She had no idea if he was sleeping or just sitting in the dark. And still, the mountain felt more honest than her father's house ever had. The days blurred quickly. He rose early. He chopped wood, checked traps, skinned meat, tended to nothing but what kept him alive. Clara stayed mostly inside, unsure where the edge of safe ended. She boiled water when he brought it. She swept the floor. Once, she tried to make stew. It burned. He said nothing. Just ate it. By the fourth day, Clara tried again. "Why did you agree?" she asked as he sharpened a knife beside the fire. He paused. "Didn't know what I was agreeing to. Just that a man wanted to pay me to keep a secret." "You think I'm a secret?" Elias looked at her, not unkindly. "I think you're someone who needs to stop waiting to be punished." On the seventh morning, she woke to find snow blown in under the cabin door and Elias not inside. She panicked. For a moment, her mind screamed, "He left you, just like your father." Then the door opened and Elias stepped in, holding a bundle of firewood and something wrapped in cloth. Her shawl. He had stitched a T she hadn't even noticed. "I need another set of hands today," he said. "Can you walk in snow?" She nodded. He tossed her a coat too big for her shoulders and stepped out again. That was the first day Clara touched the mountain not as a prisoner, but as a person. She slipped once. Cursed once. He didn't laugh. But when she stopped on a ridge, out of breath, and looked down into the endless trees, she felt something shift inside her. Not peace, but presence. Elias watched her quietly and said nothing. That silence was the kindest thing anyone had ever given her. The cold never asked questions, and neither did Elias Boone. Clara learned that quickly. Days passed without full sentences, only gestures, a nod to the axe, a jerk of the chin toward the kettle. She was used to words being weapons. At home, silence had always meant something was about to explode. But Elias's silence was different. It didn't carry judgment. It gave space. And space, she found, was harder to live in than fear. It was on the 12th day that Clara first heard him speak more than a sentence. They had just finished stacking wood beside the cabin. She stood brushing the frost from her sleeves, her breath forming clouds in the sharp morning air. Elias leaned against the shed wall, wiping sap from his palms with a rag. "You ever chopped a tree before?" She blinked. "No. You'd think it's about strength," he said. "But it's rhythm. Same as breathing." Then he handed her the axe. Clara's first swing was too hard, too off-center. The axe head glanced off the back, jarring her arms. She bit her lip and reset. He didn't correct her. Just stood nearby, arms crossed, watching. By the fourth swing, she'd found something resembling rhythm. She didn't think, just struck. Again and again. Breath, lift, drop. When the trunk finally split with a satisfying crack, she stepped back, panting, hair plastered to her forehead. Elias gave a quiet nod. "Takes most folks twice as long their first time." A flicker of pride lit inside her, small, but warm. Later, while tending the fire, she asked, "You don't talk much, do you?" Elias looked up from the chair he'd carved for himself years ago. "Words get heavy. You start carrying too many. You don't notice when they crush you." She stared into the flames. "My father carried words like swords. Used them to slice." "That's not carrying. That's throwing." That night, she dreamed of voices, overlapping, hissing, judging. Then of silence, vast and still like the snow. When she woke, she found Elias sitting in the doorway with his rifle across his lap, watching the trees. "You sleep with your eyes open." She muttered. He didn't look back. "I sleep light. Expecting something." "No. That's why I'm ready." She didn't ask what haunted him, but something in her chest whispered, "He knows what it's like to be taken." Left. One afternoon, a storm rolled in fast, wind howling, trees groaning like old bones. Clara rushed to help Elias tie down the shed tarp. As they worked, the sky opened up with sleet that bit into their skin. She lost her grip on the rope. Elias reached out instinctively, catching her wrist, the same way her father had grabbed her the day he gave her away. Her breath hitched. Her whole body froze. Elias immediately let go. "Sorry," he said, stepping back, voice low. She nodded, unable to speak. They didn't talk about it, but that moment stayed between them, like a fragile string neither dared pull. The next morning, she found a pair of gloves waiting on the edge of her furs, patched, a little too big, but warm. She didn't ask where they came from. On the 17th day, Clara asked the question that had been burning in her chest since the night she arrived. "Why do they call you mad?" Elias didn't look up from the rabbit he was skinning. "Because I don't live like them," he said. "Because I buried a wife and a boy under this mountain, and chose to stay after." She sat down slowly across from him. "I'm sorry." He nodded once. "They say grief makes a man mad. Maybe they are right. What happened?" He paused, knife mid-motion, then continued skinning. "Flu came through the valley 5 winters ago. My boy caught it first. My wife tried to nurse him. I went for help. Came back too late for both." Clara's throat tightened. "And no one helped you?" "They said the Lord gave and the Lord took. Same words they probably said to you." She blinked. "Exactly the same." A long silence followed, but this one felt different. Less like absence, more like understanding. That evening, Elias added a second log to the fire. He never said why. Weeks passed. Clara grew stronger. Her arms carried firewood without trembling. She caught her first squirrel in a snare and cleaned it without flinching. Elias rarely praised, but sometimes, when she finished a task, she'd catch a small nod or the barest flicker of a smile in his beard. That was enough. One night, after clearing snow from the roof, Clara stood at the ridge behind the cabin, staring down into the dark forest. "What happens when spring comes?" she asked aloud, not knowing if he was near. His voice came from behind her, calm. "Up to you. You're not sending me back. No one said you had to return. My father will." "He gave you away." Clara. "Gave. Not loaned." She turned. "So I'm just free now?" Elias shrugged. "Freedom ain't always a gift. Sometimes it's a weight you carry alone." She didn't respond. The wind carried her hair across her cheek. Elias reached out slowly, tucked it behind her ear. Not possessively, not intimately, just human. She didn't flinch this time. They walked back in silence, and she realized something she hadn't dared to think before. This place, this cold, quiet, brutal place, had become safer than home ever was. The mountain thawed slowly. By early April, the snow melted into cold rivulets that carved paths through the dirt. The trees dripped steadily, and the sharp white of winter dulled into the browns and greens of spring. Clara could feel the change in her body too, stronger now, leaner, steadier. Her hands were calloused. Her legs no longer wobbled after long hikes. She no longer waited for orders, nor feared the silence between words. She had become a part of the mountain. But the world below had not forgotten her. It happened on a gray morning. Elias had gone to check the upper traps. Clara was boiling water for bread dough when she heard it. The sound of hooves. Not fast, not frantic, just steady, deliberate. She froze. No one came here. Not unless they were lost. Or looking. She stepped outside cautiously, apron still tied, hands white with flour. The figure came into view through the mist. Tall, black-coated, seated high on a chestnut horse. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face. But she knew that posture. The straight spine. The stiff pride. Reverend Silas Whitlow. Her breath caught. For a moment, she stood there, motionless. Her feet didn't run. Her mouth didn't open. Something in her chest simply shut. He pulled his horse to a stop a few feet from the cabin. "Clara." Her name hit her like a cold wind. She said nothing. "I've come to bring you home." Still, she said nothing. Silas looked down at her, eyes narrowed. "You've had your time to think, to reflect. You've learned, I trust, what comes from pride." Behind him rode another man, younger, stockier, in a brown coat and a leather belt heavy with a pistol. A local preacher's assistant, maybe, or a hired escort. Clara stood her ground. You gave me away, she said quietly. Silas's jaw tensed. I gave you time. There's a difference. You called it punishment. It was mercy. And now, it's done. You'll come down the mountain. We'll marry you off properly. Start clean. Clara's fingers curled tightly in her apron. I'm not going anywhere, she said. His eyes hardened. Don't test me, girl. I've come all this way in the name of forgiveness. Don't spit in the face of it. She opened her mouth, not to reply, but because she heard something behind her. Footsteps. Elias Boone emerged from the woods like the mountain itself had sent him. A rifle slung over one shoulder, shirt damp from mist. His expression unreadable. He stepped up beside Clara, not in front of her, not blocking her, just beside. The Reverend's horse sidestepped nervously. Silas glanced at Elias, squinting. You, he said. I gave you a responsibility. Elias nodded once. You did. I kept it. Then you'll release her now. Elias looked at Clara, then back to Silas. She's not bound here. Then what's keeping her? Elias didn't answer, but Clara did. I am. The words came louder than she expected. Even Elias turned to look at her, just slightly. I'm staying, she said. You gave me away like a piece of wood, like I was ashamed to be buried. But I am not ashamed anymore. You belong to your blood, Silas snapped. To your name. To the house of the Lord. I belong to your fear, Clara said. To your pride. Not anymore. Silas leaned forward slightly in the saddle. You've been poisoned by this place. This man. Elias's expression remained calm, but his fingers touched the rifle strap slowly. She's free to leave, he said quietly. Or stay. She's a girl, Silas hissed. Barely grown. You think she understands the world? She's been up here fending off wolves and hauling wood. That's not a life. No, Elias said. It's living. The second man on horseback finally spoke. Do we take her or not? Silas turned his gaze to Clara again. I will give you until sundown. After that, we ride back through this trail. You'll come with us, or I'll return with law. Clara held his stare. Then come back. He grunted, yanked his reins, and turned the horse. The two men vanished back into the trees. Clara exhaled shakily, realizing she hadn't breathed properly for a full minute. Elias said nothing as they returned inside. She placed another log on the fire. Her hands shook only slightly. After a long moment, Elias finally spoke. You did well. I was terrified. You stood. She nodded. I thought he would hit me. He might. I'm not leaving, she said. I know. That night, the silence felt different. Not empty, but earned. Elias sat near the fire, carving something into a piece of pine. Clara sat across from him, knees drawn up, wrapped in one of the cabin's heavy wool blankets. Did you ever go back? She asked. To what? The town. The people who let your family die. Elias shook his head slowly. Some ghosts don't need visiting. You think he'll come back? Yes. You scared? No. Just tired. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the deep lines in his face, the way his shoulders never fully relaxed. Not even here. Do you ever wish you'd left this place? She asked. He looked at her, then down at the wood in his hands. Only once. When? The night you showed up. She smiled. The first real one in weeks. He didn't smile back, but his eyes warmed, and that was enough. As night deepened and the wind picked up again, Clara lay on her bed of fairs, awake. Not with fear, but with certainty. Her father would return. He would not come alone. And this time, she wouldn't just stand. She would fight. The sky cracked open with thunder 2 days later. Clara knew before she saw them. The birds in the trees had gone silent. The air felt too still. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. She stood at the edge of the woodpile, axe resting on her shoulder, sleeves rolled to her elbows. The mountain, so often her shield, felt like it had turned to glass, clear, brittle, and waiting to be shattered. Elias was near the shed, sharpening his hunting knife with slow, practiced strokes. He didn't look up, but he spoke first. "They are here." She nodded. "How many?" "3 horses. 4 men." They arrived just after noon, not creeping this time, but riding up bold, like they owned the trees. Reverend Silas rode at the front. His black coat whipped in the wind, and his mouth was set in a straight line. Behind him were 2 men Clara didn't recognize, both younger, one carrying a rifle on his back, the other with a lawman's badge glinting faintly on his chest. The last was the same brown-coated man from before. They didn't dismount. Silas looked down at Elias, who now stood between Clara and the cabin door, arms folded loosely. "This is no longer a conversation," Silas said. "This is law." The man with the badge lifted a folded paper. "Court order," he called out. "Signed by Judge Thorne in town. States that Miss Clara Whitlow is to be returned to her lawful guardian, her father, on grounds of abandonment and suspected abduction." Clara stepped forward. "I wasn't abducted." The lawman raised a brow. "That may be, but we don't settle such things up here in the snow. You want to speak your truth, you come to court." "She was given away," Elias said, voice even. "I didn't take what wasn't offered." "She's underage," Silas snapped. "She has no rights without a man to speak for her." "I'm right here," Clara said. Silas ignored her, turning to Elias. "Stand aside." Elias didn't move. The rifleman shifted slightly in his saddle. His fingers tapped the butt of his gun. "Once. You plan to fight us." Silas said, "You think your little shack can hold off a court order and a bullet?" Elias's voice dropped low. "I think you've forgotten what the mountain teaches." "And what's that?" "That men who come to take something never leave the way they came." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Silas gave a quiet nod to the lawman. "Take her." The rifleman dismounted first. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. She felt Elias shift beside her, not drawing his weapon, but positioning his body so it stood between her and them. His stillness was more threatening than any drawn gun. The rifleman walked up, slow and steady. "You can make this easier," he said. "Just come with us." Clara didn't move. Then Elias spoke. "She's not going anywhere." The rifleman smirked. "You gonna shoot me, mountain man?" "No," Elias said. But Clara stepped forward. "I will." She raised the old hunting rifle Elias had taught her to load just days ago. It trembled in her hands, but her eyes were steady. The men froze. Even Elias turned, surprise flickering across his face for the first time. "I didn't ask to be born in his house," Clara said, voice steady. "I didn't ask to be thrown away like kindling. But I choose to stay here. That's more than I ever got before. So if you want to take me..." She clicked the rifle bolt back. "You better be sure the Lord himself is riding behind you." Silence, the kind that presses into your skin. Then the rifleman lifted his hands slightly and stepped back. "She's not going peacefully," he said to Silas. "She doesn't have to," Silas replied, seething. "Take her." The man with the badge looked from Clara to Elias, then to the trees around them. 4 men, he muttered. "Middle of nowhere. No cover. No warrant to shoot." Then louder. "You want this settled. You bring it to court. I'm not spilling blood over one man's pride." Silas turned on him, furious. "You are walking away from justice." "I'm walking away from a gun pointed at me by a girl with nothing left to lose." He turned his horse. "You can stay and die if you like, Reverend." The others hesitated. Then, one by one, they followed. Silas stayed a moment longer. He stared at Clara, eyes full of a fury deeper than doctrine. "You think you're safe with that man?" he hissed. Clara lowered the rifle just slightly. "I'm safer than I ever was with you." He left in silence. No threats. No blessings. Only the crunch of hooves and the slow return of mountain quiet. Clara stood still for a long time. Her arms were shaking now, her chest tight. Elias gently reached out and took the rifle from her hands, set it on the ground. Then he said, "You didn't wait for me." "I didn't need to," she whispered. And then, for the first time, she broke. Tears welled up and spilled fast. Not from fear, but from release. From the weight of years falling all at once. Elias did not comfort her with words. He simply stood there, tall, still, solid, her shield. Later that night, by the fire, she asked softly, "Will they come again?" "Maybe." "What do we do?" Elias looked at her, his face unreadable in the flickering firelight. "We live." That night, she slept without fear, not because danger was gone, but because she had faced it, and for the first time in her life, she hadn't flinched. Spring came late that year. The snow held on longer than usual, as if the mountain wasn't ready to let go. Trees stayed bare. Rivers groaned beneath their icy skins. But slowly, like something learning to breathe again, green crept back. Clara was the first to spot the bloom. A single violet, pushing through frozen dirt just beside the woodpile. It looked fragile, too soft to last, but it held its head high against the chill wind. She crouched beside it, touched a finger to its petal. "You and me both," she whispered. Life on the mountain grew in quiet ways. Elias had carved a second chair for the porch, not a word about it. Just one morning, there it was. Sturdy, plain, his. Clara built a coop for chickens, learned to fish. She stitched her own boots when the old ones wore thin. Once, she fell into the river trying to pull a trap, came back soaked and laughing, and Elias had looked at her like she'd dropped down from the moon. "You sound like Joy," he'd said, half to himself. She never forgot that. They didn't speak of Silas again. Not until the letter came. It arrived tucked into a parcel of supplies sent from town. A local merchant, friendly to Elias, had passed it along. The handwriting was unmistakable, sharp, slanted, and angry. Clara read it at the kitchen table. "Clara, your rebellion has brought disgrace to this family. You may think yourself clever, but the devil rewards pride with ruin. When you fall, and you will, no one will come for you. You are no longer my daughter. Reverend Silas Whitlow." She folded the paper, set it in the fire, and watched it burn. Elias didn't ask what it said, but later, when they were splitting logs, he paused and said, "You know what a name means out here?" She looked up. "What?" "It means whatever you live like." Summer brought thunderstorms and heat. With it came trade. Once a month, Elias would load the wagon and ride into town for salt, flour, oil. Clara began to go with him. At first, just to see. Then, slowly, to sell. She carved wooden spoons, wove baskets, mended linens for women who couldn't thread needles anymore. People started asking her name. And when she answered, "Clara Whitlow," they didn't flinch. They nodded. Sometimes they'd ask, "Any relation to the Reverend?" And she'd say, "Not anymore." The mountain became hers in pieces. The eastern trail where the rabbits nested. The bend in the stream where fish liked to hide beneath a fallen log. The ridge where the sunrise hit first, and where she once stood in the cold before dawn, arms wide, letting the wind sing through her hair like it knew her story. She didn't write Silas back, but she carved her answer into everything she touched. One day, in town, a woman from the trading post pulled her aside. "You're the girl who lived up there," the woman said. Clara stiffened. "I live there now." The woman smiled. "I meant the girl they tried to take, the one who raised a gun." I didn't shoot. No, the woman said. But you didn't run either. She handed Clara a bundle of fabric. A gift. I lost a daughter once. I like to think maybe someone up there like you would have looked after her. Clara blinked, stunned. It was the first time someone didn't look at her like a warning, but like a promise. In late fall, Elias grew ill. It wasn't sudden. Just a cough that didn't leave. A tremor in his hand when he held a mug. Clara noticed the way he lingered by the fire longer, the way he climbed stairs slower. He never said the word, but she knew. She took over the trapping, sharpened the blades, mended the roof. One night, he sat her down by the fire and said simply, "It's yours now." She didn't cry. She nodded. "I don't know if I was meant to raise anyone," he added. "You didn't," she said gently. "You let me raise myself. But this time, with hands that didn't hurt." He smiled. Soft. "That's something, isn't it?" He passed before the first snow. No ceremony. Just the mountain, the wind, and Clara burying him beneath the tall pines he'd once said were older than memory. She carved his name into a flat stone. Beneath it, she etched, "He left the world quieter than he found it." Winter returned. But this time, she did not fear it. She'd chopped the wood herself, hung the meats, smoked the fish, laid the snares, tucked every tool in its rightful place. She stewed on the porch, wrapped in a coat made from her own stitching, and looked out at the mountain. Her mountain. Then she went inside, and wrote a letter. "To whoever finds this place one day. If you came here looking for escape, welcome. If you came here hiding from pain, I know that feeling. If someone told you you were too much, too loud, too wrong, they lied. This place is proof that you don't need permission to begin again. There's firewood in the shed. The stove leaks a little, but it works if you listen to it. Don't eat the red berries near the stream. And if you hear the wind call your name, that's not a warning. That's a welcome. Live like no one owns your name. Not your father. Not your fae. Clara. Just Clara." Years passed. Stories spread. People spoke of the girl in the mountain. The one who raised a rifle. The one who carved spoons and stitched coats and lived like the trees bowed to her. Some said she was a ghost. Others said she was a witch. But the truth was simpler. She was a girl once thrown away. And now, she was a legend. Not because she wanted revenge. Not because she sought justice. But because she stayed. She stayed and grew and made peace with silence. She stayed and built a life from what the world forgot. And the mountain, in return, remembered her. Every spring, the violets bloomed a little earlier, as if they knew her name.